Section 6 of Cat Tales. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Bologna Times. Cats by Mrs. R. Lee. Section 6. Cats are diminished examples of the feline race, but their fur is longer than that of others, and they bear a greater resemblance to leopards than to lions. The idea of majesty is not connected with them, but they are celebrated for grace, elegance, suppleness, and insidiousness. There is yet a wild species in existence, which inhabits the mountainous and wooded districts of the northern part of England and also Scotland, where it used formerly to be very abundant. It is scarcely necessary to give a description, even of the untamed species, so well known are the general characters of these animals. It will be quite sufficient to say that the head of the latter is triangular, the soles of the feet of the male are always black, their tails are bushy, they spring furiously upon whoever approaches, and utter unearthly cries. Mr. St. John, when walking up to his knees in heather, over broken ground, came suddenly upon a wild cat. She rushed out between his legs, every hair standing up. He cut a good-sized stick, and 3 Skye terriers gave chase till she took refuge in a corner, spitting and growling. On trying to dislodge her, she flew at Mr. St. John's face, over the dogs' heads, but he struck her while in the air, and she fell among the dogs, who soon dispatched her, even though they say that a wild cat has 12 instead of 9 lives. If one be taken, those in the neighbourhood are sure to be also secured, as they will all, in the manner of foxes, assemble round the body of their relation. Domestic cats often run away to the woods, and subsist on their own hunting, but these are not to be taken for the real wild cat. The female of the latter is the smaller of the two, and retires into the fissures of rocks, or takes possession of some large bird's nest when she is about to have young ones. They are found all through Germany, Russia, Hungary, and the north of Asia, where their fur is much more valued than it is here, probably on account of the length and quality of the hair. Our house cats are, by most naturalists, supposed not to have descended from the above wild species. Professor Temminck ascribes their origin to the Nubian cat found in that country by Mr. Ruppel, but Mr. Bell differs from him. Cats were numerous in Egypt, where they were much prized, and honoured with being embalmed. In Abyssinia they form part of a marriage dowry, for fear the mice should eat up the other portions. Nevertheless, it will be perhaps more like the truth if we give our cats an Asiatic origin. When they run wild, Mr. St. John says, they are often irreclaimable, and do incredible mischief. There are instances, however, of their returning to their homes bringing game with them. One known to the above gentleman used every winter evening to bring in a woodcock; another brought back rabbits and hares. The latter was constantly caught in traps, which accident did not cure him of his wanderings, and he never struggled, but sat quietly till someone came and effected his release. All cats sleep slightly, raise their back, bristle up their hair, and swell up their tail when angry. Those which have been domesticated are very inquisitive concerning things rather than persons, smell and inspect a new piece of furniture several times, are attached to houses, and are extremely fond of scents, especially certain kinds emanating from plants. They seldom eat the rats which they kill, although they devour mice. If they should swallow a shrew, which is very rare, they almost immediately reject it. They will sit hour after hour watching at the mouth of a hole, and, after seizing their prey, bring it to their favourites in the house to show their prowess, and strut about with a great air of self-satisfaction. They generally have a great dislike to water, but they have been known to surmount this when they could catch a fish, for which species of food they have a great preference. The accusation that they play with you one minute and scratch you the next is too true. The change is not an act of treachery, but arises from excitement. I know not whence it is derived, but for centuries cats have been connected with superstition and sorcery. They have always been regarded as attendants upon witches, and witches themselves have been said to borrow their shapes when on their mysterious expeditions. I was once told that Lord Cochrane was accompanied by a favourite black cat in a cruise through the northern seas. The weather had been most unpropitious, no day had passed without some untoward circumstance, and the sailors were not slow in attributing the whole to the influence of the black cat on board. This came to Lord Cochrane's ears, and knowing that any attempt to reason his men out of so absurd a notion was perfectly useless, he offered to sacrifice this object of his regard, and have her thrown overboard. This, however, far from creating any satisfaction, only alarmed the men still more. They were sure that the tempests she would then raise would be much worse than any they had yet encountered, and they implored his lordship to let her remain unmolested. There was no help, and they could only hope. If she were not affronted, they might, at the end of their time, reach England in safety. Black cats were always more especially connected with superstitious feelings, and I was once accosted by a peasant's wife, who, with a phial in her hand to contain it, requested I would give her a few drops of blood from the tail of my black kitten, not only to bring luck to her hearth, but to keep pestilence from her doors. Even lately a working woman told me not to turn a stray black cat from my house, for if I did I should never have any prosperity afterwards. Captain Brown tells us that on Halloween it was usual in Scotland for families to tie up their cat, in order to preserve it from being used as a pony by the witches that night. Those who neglected this precaution ran the risk of seeing their cat scampering through the fields with a witch on its back, on the high road to Norway. A black cat was commonly sacrificed by the ancients to Hecate, or among the Scandinavians to Freya, the northern Hecate. A black cat sent with a prayer book and a bag of sand into a new house, so as to precede the proprietor in possession, was formerly deemed essential to ensure prosperity to the person changing his abode. To steal a black cat and bury it alive is in the Irish Highlands considered as a specific for a disorder in cattle termed blacklegs, which otherwise proves fatal. There is yet another peculiar feeling respecting cats, namely, the strange antipathy which some persons entertain towards them, and is equally unassailable with that of superstition. Of course, in many instances, illness and weak indulgence have greatly increased it, but in some cases it has been unconsciously harbored, and in others unconquerable. A friend of mine told me that through life this feeling had accompanied him, in spite of every endeavor made to eradicate it. When a little boy he awoke one night with that trembling and cold perspiration which always assailed him when a cat was in his vicinity, and, screaming for help, he entreated the servant who entered to take away the cat which was in the room. The man searched, but found no traces of puss. His young master still persisted she was there, but a renewed search proved equally unavailing, nor could he compose himself to rest unless the servant remained in the room till he was asleep. This accomplished, the man left him, and a second time my friend awoke in the same manner, with the same appeals for assistance. They were obeyed, he himself joined in the search, and he dragged out a cat from the close stove, for it was in Germany, which had taken refuge there, and been wholly unperceived by the manservant. This gentleman's daughter inherited the same antipathy, and neither the tenderest feelings towards other dumb creatures, or the strongest efforts of a mind of unusual strength could subdue the uncomfortable